trial and error there. I have got such a cool video for you today because I am out here in the new Ford Bronco Raptor. This is the ultimate Ford Bronco, and I am in this goofy helmet on the King of the Hammers race course, where Ford has invited me out to check out what this Bronco is capable of, which is already proving to be quite impressive. All right, sorry, I'm really focusing here. I don't want to be the idiot who takes out 80 grand worth of Bronco Raptor. Thank you, sir.
You betcha.
And just like that, we made it up a first rock crawl, and that was about a 2-foot rock, and the Bronco Raptor just walked right up that. We have 13.1 inches of ground clearance on this beast. Twin turbo, 3-liter V6 engine, 418 horsepower. This video is brought to you by Onyx Off-Road, our go-to off-road navigation software. You can find and drive the best trails in your area, download maps ahead of time so you never get lost, and even connect it via Apple CarPlay. I'm about to drive this Bronco down a literal cliff, and of course everything on camera looks far easier than it actually is. But this is a seriously steep obstacle. I'm gonna go into low range, manually select first gear, and follow the spotter and hope he doesn't roll us over. He's in a combat helmet, so you know he knows what he's doing. Just gonna take it super easy, nice and slow. He said there's a rollover potential here, and if he uses the words gas, gas, gas to accelerate with a lot of gusto. All right, that is 31 degrees. Downhill, that's not bad. Man.
Had to pull you for a glamour shot right there, you're good.
Thanks, man, I appreciate it. That was a ton of fun. And even those really steep hills, the Ford Bronco feels like it has a lot of composure because it's only available in Raptor form in the 4-door long wheelbase version. And a lot of folks are like, oh, I'm not so sure about that's better on-road or off-road. Well, in situations like that where you're pointing super vertical uphill or super vertical downhill, having that extra wheelbase can be a big blessing. Now we're going down this insanely steep descent, well over 30 degrees at this point, and you really feel the mass of this vehicle. It is over 5,700 pounds, which is a lot of weight to be dragging down a vertical cliff. But these 37-inch KO2 tires are doing a great job of maintaining grip with this sandy surface and these rocks on the inside. And we made it down thanks to the wonderful spotting of the folks helping the Ford team. Let's talk about what elevates the Bronco Raptor above the already incredibly capable Bronco Sasquatch. So we got to start with tires, of course. Now the Sasquatch Bronco runs a 35, the Bronco Raptor a 37, and then this one has the optional beadlock capable wheels. If you take a look in there, check out those Fox shocks with live valve technology. They're internal bypass 3.1s, and those are connected to a Dana 50 rear end, which is beefier than a standard Bronco. They've also really beefed up the frame to take the extra loads that the Bronco Raptor will be under when you're desert running. Let's talk about the unmistakable fender flares, because that is certainly one of the more polarizing aspects of the Raptor. These are here because the overall track width is roughly 8.6 inches wider than any other Bronco, and the overall width total nearly 10 inches, 9.8. These are a regulation thing, so the tire stays covered. This obstacle we are going to tackle in the new Ford Bronco Raptor is called Her Problem. And this is part of the King of the Hammers race course, where they're racing up here in rock buggies and crazy modified vehicles. So we're gonna see how a bone stock vehicle with a warranty tackles this course. All right, here we go on this extreme off-road course in the new Bronco Raptor. Now, I would definitely rate this at least an 8 or a 9 out of 10. This is an extreme challenge, and it really is going to test the capability of this new Ford Bronco Raptor. Now, I'm gonna basically 2-foot it. We'll try it the old-fashioned way by cranking down on the brake pedal while accelerating with the throttle. And a lot of control that way. What we can do actually in the Bronco is turn on a 1-foot drive mode, and it should kind of simulate that same level of control. Back end's wiggling around. We are on the skid plates hard now. Steering is very precise. Very impressed with the steering on this vehicle. Now, one thing which I'm noticing very quickly is that just looking out the front of this Bronco, you can't tell the width with the fender flares. Unless you actually see it from the outside, it does not seem as wide as it is from the driver's seat. And I do predict that that might be a problem for some folks in some technical off-road terrain, because it gives kind of the illusion of being much narrower than it is, but those fender flares stick out so far beyond the body that it's easy to kind of slice them on a rock. Now, out here in the desert, that is not so much of a problem because we've got plenty of width availability, but in a forest in Colorado or in Michigan, I think that the width could start to be a detriment in terms of the off-road capability of the Bronco Raptor from a rock crawling setting. Now, I am constantly impressed by this EcoBoost engine. Of course, everybody in the Bronco Raptor was really hoping for a V8, but when you consider that the curb weight of this vehicle is already 5,700 plus pounds, I'm not sure a V8 would aid in any of its capability, especially out on the rocks. It would sound better, that's for certain, and it would be a pretty cool thing to have, but when you're rock crawling, that weight is a detriment to you. Now, the ride quality is impressive. The different goat modes do have a fairly large impact on the suspension tuning, the throttle tuning, and the steering tuning. And in rock crawl mode, the throttle response is perfect for these rather extreme boulders. Visibility from a window perspective is fairly good. Now, the hood does dive steep down right at the edge, and it can be a little bit tricky to know where the edge of the hood really is. Like I was saying about these tires, the KO2 is a magnificent tire. It really has just such a breadth of ability. This is a hard thing to do, to talk and pay attention and try to tell you important things about the Bronco. So of course this has the 10-speed automatic transmission. It is very smooth and responsive on the road. But when you get it out on the rocks in low range, come on, don't get stuck on me. There we go. The shift point between first and second gear is very, very firm, and it really jolts the vehicle in automatic mode when it goes between first and second. Good thing we had these steps removed because I just used the rock rail pretty hard there. All right, thank you, sir. Just like that, we are out of the rock crawl section. So my overall takeaway from rock crawling in the Bronco Raptor: insanely capable. The locker engagement on this Bronco is better than any vehicle I've ever been in. Push the hero switch, front locker, rear locker, they just click on so fast, and they're independent of each other, so you can do one at a time. You can do one, like the front locked, rear unlocked, vice versa, depending on the situation. So convenient. Overall, a very, very potent rock crawler. All right, everybody, we are on the off-road high-speed course in the new Bronco, about to do a launch. Pretty good off the line. There go the turbos. They really hit hard, about 4,000, 5,000 RPM, 60 miles an hour, and then hard on the brake. Engage that off-road ABS. And all the dust passes us. I can see nothing. I don't know where the course is. There we go. Almost hit a cone. All right, now let's go ahead and try some big slides, some high-speed slides. Now I've got the Bronco in the Baja mode, and we're gonna see how it performs. So little tap of the brake, that nose dives. Kind of an unusual surface, this lake bed. So the rear end comes around. Okay, and then I'm gonna go hard on the brake. Let that pivot around. Oh yeah, look at that. That is awesome, that is so cool. So you can actually steer the rear end with the brake on this vehicle, which is just wild. So you get hard on the brake, and then that unloads the rear axle, and you can really get a lot of pivot. So I always think of kind of sliding as a on-throttle activity, but in the Bronco Raptor, at least on this relatively loose lake bed, you get off the throttle, hard on the brake, and that thing comes around beautifully. Now let's go ahead and try this slalom, see what it's like. Now, of course, there is a lot of body roll, but of course, this is intended to kind of go do some big slides and some big jumps at really high speeds. And I've got the advanced traction control completely disabled on this vehicle right now. That's a little bit of a handful. That is going to take some practice, because we're looking at over 5,700 pounds worth of mass swinging around, and that tail does come around with no restrictions if you have the right traction control mode on. So yeah, it's not quite as responsive as you would expect on like a performance street car. You kind of make the steering input and then wait for the weight transfer to dig in, and then you can get that slide around. That's a lot of fun. It's just a little tricky. You need someone with more experience than I do to do that really well. Here in the front too, there's a lot of changes Raptor compared to standard Bronco. So of course, the most obvious, the FORD Ford grille with the built-in integrated marker lights. This adds to the additional airflow. The bumper is fairly similar to a standard Bronco, although the recovery points have been upgraded. And then down here, we've got these rigid lights, 2 for fogs and then 2 for off-road lights. The side steps are easily removable. You have 6 bolts, pull those out, and then you have access to your rock rail underneath there for when you're doing some extreme rock crawling. In the front here, you can see the fender flare continues with this little overrider down here that acts as like a little mud flap. We've got venting along the side here, and these are functional vents. This is actually what they call an SMC, basically molded material. It's basically a sophisticated plastic. And then up on the hood, we've got a Raptor specific hood bulge with heat extractors, because this thing can suck in so much more air than a standard Bronco. It has to get that air out of the engine compartment, and that's where the heat extractors come in. All right, this is what we've been waiting for. Actual desert running in the new Ford Bronco Raptor. I cannot believe this is actually happening right now. So this is an actual race course where they race full-on desert runners, and we are doing it in a factory-produced vehicle that you can buy with a warranty. Truly unbelievable. So we're coming up to the fast section here, and we can really open up this twin turbo V6. All right, there's the power band, 5,000, 6,000 RPM, all the way to redline, and we're just gonna let that suspension float over these whoops. And this is why you spend the money. If you aren't doing this with your Bronco Raptor, what are you doing, buddy? This is incredible. Now we are going over these whoops that are in some cases 6 inches deep, in some cases 1 foot deep, and it just soaks all of it up. It's like one of those Star Wars land skimmers. You feel the suspension working underneath you, but your body stays super level. It's like nothing I've ever experienced before. Now the tires are a little bit aired down for this kind of running, but these 37s do a great job of soaking up all the bumps. Now this has a whole suite of different drive modes. And of course, we are in the Baja mode, which is perfectly set up for high-speed desert running. Back on the throttle, lots of power, big power, 418 horsepower, but that 440 pound-feet of torque is really the news here. Ford has marked out this course with these little double arrows to let us know of hazards. So when you get to the hazard, hard on the brakes, feel the ABS. You can actually disable ABS altogether on the Bronco Raptor by holding the brake and holding the traction control. Back on the power, whole thing squirms around through the ruts. Now this is where you really want that centering mark on the steering wheel. When you start making some really big turns, it can be easy to disorient yourself as to where the steering wheel position is. Back on the brakes because we got this giant dip. And we're going to dive into that right around 25 miles an hour. Back on the throttle, downshift one gear. Now this Bronco does have a fully digital gauge cluster, and it's got this huge gear position indicator, so you know exactly what gear you're in when you start approaching these events, which is very, very cool. We're hovering right around third gear, 60 miles an hour going through these whoops, and that suspension is just working. We are not on any bump stops. This is when you want that 13 inches of front travel and 14 inches of rear travel. It really comes into its own here. And back on the brakes, full ABS into the rut, and then on the throttle. A little bit of air there. You can hear the drivetrain spin up a little bit. Now this is some soft silt. You start losing steering composure when you really dive into that soft silt. But a little bit of brake pressure, a little bit of turn in, and that rear end just glides around like a ballerina. Truly incredible. This is so much fun. Now this is Johnson Valley, and this is actually where they developed the Ford Bronco Raptor. So this is where the magic happened when they were doing suspension tuning and making sure the chassis would put up with this. Now this transmission is not all that eager to downshift if it doesn't have to, because the 3-liter twin-turbo EcoBoost has such a broad power band that you can kind of get a decent amount of push even at 2,500 or 3,000 RPM. All right, one more obstacle here. Hard on the brakes. Unload the suspension before we hit that big divot. So there you go, that was full throttle, but the transmission stayed planted in second gear. Didn't need a downshift into first. That just wastes time. Now the sound is, I'm going to say it, remarkably similar to the Nissan 370Z, kind of like a VQ. This engine really wails at the higher RPMs. It is the best sounding of the EcoBoost V6s, and when you go into Baja mode, you can of course unleash that active exhaust system. And now we're going to tackle a jump in the Ford Bronco. A factory-equipped vehicle is going to tackle a jump at 60 miles an hour. We'll see what happens. Should you jump your Ford Bronco? I wouldn't, but Ford is encouraging us to, so we will. So on the throttle, we're gonna nail it in at about 60 miles an hour. I can't believe I'm gonna tackle this. There's 45, there's 50, there's 60 miles an hour there. Wow, I didn't feel that in my spine at all. You just, oh! Freaking awesome. I cannot believe that we just did that in an $80,000 Bronco Raptor. An absolutely incredible day out here in the desert with the new Ford Bronco Raptor. Now, starting price right around 70 grand. A lot of these fully loaded with the Lux package, you're gonna be topping $80,000. But if you want a factory-equipped vehicle that can do stuff that just about no other OEM can, at least out in the desert, the Bronco Raptor is awesome. Now, bringing into some tight Colorado trees, I do worry about the width of it, but that thing is an absolute beast. Once you put the skinny pedal to the carpet and start hitting the dry lake beds or the service roads, almost nothing can keep up with it. Guys, thank you for watching. As always, this has been Tommy Cole behind the camera, the real hero out here at 112 outside of Palm Springs. We'll see you on the next one.